He wasn't supposed to speak. That was the deal. She offered him more money than he had ever seen, just to stay quiet. And for a moment, he almost said yes. But what she didn't know, he had already recorded everything. And in less than 24 hours, her perfect life started collapsing in front of millions. Money can silence a lot of people, but not everyone. Some people don't break. Some people don't fold. And when you push them too far, they don't just fight back. They expose everything. This is the story of a woman who thought money could erase the truth, and the man who made sure the world would hear it. Welcome to Prime Tale. If you love shocking stories, unexpected twists, and powerful revenge, hit subscribe, because this one only gets crazier. Daniel wasn't supposed to be there that night. That's what kept replaying in his head long after everything started going wrong. The invitation wasn't his. The job wasn't even scheduled for him. He had only taken it because someone else canceled at the last minute, and the agency needed a replacement fast. It was supposed to be simple. Show up, fix a minor network issue, leave quietly, get paid. That's it. No complications. No involvement. Just another job in a long list of forgettable nights. But the moment he stepped inside that building, something felt different. It wasn't just the luxury. He had seen expensive places before. High-end hotels, corporate offices, even private events. But this was something else. The kind of place where everything looked perfect, too perfect. The lighting was soft but precise. The music was low but intentional. Every detail felt controlled. Like nothing here was accidental. Like nothing here was left to chance. People moved differently too. They didn't rush. They didn't hesitate. Conversations were quiet, measured, almost rehearsed. Smiles appeared and disappeared at the right moments. Even laughter sounded calculated. Daniel noticed all of it without trying to. It was a habit. When you spend enough time working behind systems, networks, servers, hidden frameworks, you start to notice patterns. You start to see what doesn't fit. And something here didn't. He was escorted to a side room almost immediately after arriving. A polite staff member pointed him toward a sleek workstation setup and explained the issue. Intermittent connection drops affecting a private server used for the event. Should be quick, the staff member said. Daniel nodded. Quick was good. Quick meant he wouldn't have to stay in this strange, controlled atmosphere longer than necessary. He sat down, plugged in his device, and started running diagnostics. At first, everything looked normal. Too normal. Clean logs. No obvious errors. Stable connections. But then a flicker. A brief anomaly. Something that disappeared almost as soon as it appeared. Daniel paused. Most people would have ignored it. But he didn't. He rewound the logs. Slowed everything down. Watched carefully. There it was again. A tiny spike of activity. Hidden between normal traffic. Encrypted. Masked. Almost invisible. Almost. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. This wasn't part of the job. He knew that. He should have ignored it. Closed the system. Fixed the surface issue. Walked away. That's what professionals did. That's what kept you out of trouble. But curiosity doesn't ask permission. It pulls. And before he fully decided to, he was already digging deeper. The more he looked, the worse it got. Hidden directories. Locked partitions. Files buried under layers of encryption that didn't belong in a temporary event setup. This wasn't just a network. It was something else entirely. Something protected. Something important. His heart rate picked up slightly. Not panic. Just awareness. Because now he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. Carefully hidden. Carefully maintained. And definitely not meant to be seen. He should stop. Right now. Close everything. Walk away. Pretend he saw nothing. But then a file opened. He didn't even remember clicking it. It was just there. A list. Names. Numbers. Transactions. At first, it didn't make sense. Then it did. And when it did, his entire body went still. Because those weren't just numbers. They were movements of money. Large amounts. Structured in ways that avoided detection. Connected to names that didn't belong together. People from different industries. Different levels of influence. All tied into one system. All hidden here. Daniel leaned back slightly, staring at the screen. This wasn't small. This wasn't harmless. This was the kind of thing that ruined people, or got people ruined. And suddenly, the room didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt watched. He glanced over his shoulder. Nothing. Just the same controlled environment. The same distant music. The same calm voices. But something had changed. Because now he knew. And knowing changes everything. He swallowed slowly and looked back at the screen. He had two choices. Close it and forget. Or take something. Just enough to understand later. Just enough to make sense of what he saw. His fingers moved before the thought fully formed. One file. That's all. Just one. Small enough not to trigger anything. Quick enough to go unnoticed. He copied it onto his device. It took less than 5 seconds. 5 seconds that would alter everything that came next. Because the moment it finished, a notification blinked. Not on his screen. On the system. A subtle shift. A silent alert. He froze. That shouldn't happen. Not for a simple file access. Unless. His chest tightened slightly. Unless the system was being monitored. Actively. Not passively. Not later. Now. And that's when he felt it. Not physically. But instinctively. That quiet, unmistakable awareness. Someone else knew. He didn't look around this time. He didn't need to. Because deep down, he already understood. This place wasn't just controlled. It was watching. And somewhere, behind all of this, someone had just noticed him. Daniel slowly closed the window, trying to keep everything normal. His movement steady. His breathing controlled. Act like nothing happened. Finish the job. Leave. That was the plan now. Simple. Clean. Safe. But plans don't always hold. Because across the room, standing near the edge of the dim light, someone was already looking at him. Not casually. Not briefly. Directly. And even from a distance, he could feel it. That sharp, focused attention. Like he had just stepped into something much bigger than he understood. The woman didn't approach immediately. She didn't need to. She just watched. Calm. Composed. Certain. And for the first time that night, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt before. Not curiosity. Not caution. Something deeper. Something heavier. Because in that moment, he realized one simple truth. He wasn't supposed to see what he saw. And now, he wasn't invisible anymore. Daniel tried to stay focused. Fix the system. Pack up. Leave. That was the only thing running through his mind as his fingers moved across the keyboard with controlled precision. Every action now felt heavier than before, like the air itself had thickened around him. Because he could still feel it. That presence. That awareness. He didn't look up again, but he didn't need to. He already knew she was still there. Watching. Waiting. Not reacting. Not rushing. Just observing. And somehow, that made it worse. Most people would have confronted him immediately. Asked questions. Created noise. But not her. Whoever she was, she understood control. And people like that? They didn't act unless they were already ahead. Daniel finished the diagnostics, patched the surface issue, and closed the system carefully. Every move deliberate. No sudden motions. No signs of panic. Just another technician doing his job. At least, that's what it needed to look like. He unplugged his device slowly, slipped it into his bag, and stood up. Walk out. Don't think. Just leave. He took a step toward the exit. Mr. Daniel. The voice was calm, soft, but it stopped him instantly. Not because it was loud, but because it was precise. She knew his name. Daniel turned slowly. And there she was. Closer now. No distance. No shadows to hide behind. Vanessa Cole. Up close. She was even more composed than he expected. Perfect posture. Controlled breathing. Eyes that didn't wander. They locked onto him and stayed there. Not aggressive. Not emotional. Just certain. You're finished already? She asked. Her tone was polite. Almost casual. But there was something beneath it. Something measured. Daniel nodded slightly. Yes. It was a minor issue. A small pause. Just long enough to feel intentional. That's good, she replied. Her eyes didn't leave his. Not once. And in that silence something shifted. Because now it wasn't about the job anymore. It was about him. "What exactly did you see while working?" she asked. There it was. Direct. Clean. No games. Daniel felt the question settle heavily in his chest. This was it. The moment where everything could either stay contained or spiral out. "Nothing unusual," he said calmly. "Too quickly. Too clean." And for a fraction of a second, something changed in her expression. Not doubt. Recognition. Like she had heard that answer 1,000 times before, and already knew what it meant. She stepped closer. Not aggressively, but deliberately, reducing the space between them until the conversation felt private, controlled. "You're good at what you do," she said quietly. Not a compliment. An observation. Daniel didn't respond. Because this wasn't about praise. This was about positioning. "And people who are good at what they do," she continued, "tend to notice things others don't." Her gaze sharpened slightly. "Wouldn't you agree?" Daniel held eye contact. Didn't nod. Didn't speak. Just waited. Because anything he said now would matter. A lot. Vanessa studied him for a moment longer. Then something unexpected happened. She smiled. Not warmly. Not kindly. But knowingly. "Let's not make this complicated," she said. Simple words. Heavy meaning. She turned slightly, gesturing toward a quieter hallway. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. Daniel hesitated for half a second. Just enough to feel the weight of the decision. Then he followed. Because refusing now would only make things worse. The hallway was quieter. Isolated. The sounds of the event faded into the background until it felt like they were somewhere completely separate. A controlled space. Exactly how she wanted it. Vanessa stopped near a large window overlooking the city. Lights stretched endlessly into the distance. Beautiful. Cold. She didn't look at the view. She looked at him. "You accessed something that wasn't part of your assignment," she said. No accusation in her tone. Just certainty. Daniel stayed silent. Because denying again would only insult her intelligence. And he was starting to understand. That would be a mistake. "I'm going to give you an opportunity," she continued. Her voice softened slightly. Not weaker. Just more focused. To walk away from this without consequences. There it was. The shift. From observation to negotiation. Daniel felt his pulse slow slightly. Not because he was calm, but because everything suddenly became very clear. This wasn't about if she knew. She knew. This was about what happened next. Vanessa reached into her bag slowly. No rush. No hesitation. She pulled out an envelope. Thick. Structured. Heavy. Even before she opened it, Daniel already understood. She held it between them. Not pushing it forward yet. Just letting it exist in the space. "This solves everything," she said. Calm. Certain. "You delete whatever you took. You forget what you saw. And you leave here tonight with more than enough to never think about this again." She opened the envelope slightly. Just enough. Stacks of cash. Clean. Organized. Real. Daniel's breath caught for a split second. Not visibly, but internally. It hit. Because that wasn't just money. That was a way out. Debt gone. Struggle gone. Pressure gone. All of it erased. For silence. For doing nothing. For walking away. His mind moved fast. Too fast. Weighing options. Risk versus reward. Truth versus survival. Right versus easy. And for one dangerous moment, he felt it. That pull. That whisper. Take it. No one would know. No one would care. People like her? They always won anyway. So why fight it? Why risk everything? Vanessa saw it. That flicker. That hesitation. And she knew exactly what it meant. So she moved. Just slightly. Pushing the envelope closer. Closing the distance. Sealing the offer. "Think carefully," she said softly. Because opportunities like this don't repeat. Silence. Heavy. Pressing. And in that moment, everything balanced on a single decision. Take it and disappear. Or refuse and step into something far more dangerous. Daniel looked at the envelope. then at her, then back again. And that's when something inside him shifted. Not fear, not greed, something else, something quieter, stronger. Because deep down, he understood one thing she didn't. This wasn't just about money anymore. And whatever happened next was going to change both of their lives. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, staring at the envelope. The weight of it wasn't physical. It was psychological. Because what Vanessa was offering wasn't just money. It was silence. A clean exit. A version of reality where none of this ever happened. And for a few seconds, that version felt very real, very possible, very tempting. His fingers twitched slightly at his side, like his body was already considering reaching for it before his mind could fully decide. Vanessa didn't interrupt. She didn't rush him. She knew better. Because moments like this, they didn't need pressure. They created their own. All you have to do, she said quietly, is walk away. Simple. Clean. No complications. But Daniel's mind wasn't calm anymore. It was racing. Because now that the choice was right in front of him, he couldn't ignore what came with it. If he took the money, he would never speak about this again. Not just tonight. Not just tomorrow. Ever. And that meant something deeper than silence. It meant acceptance. Acceptance that whatever he saw, whatever was happening behind those hidden files, would continue. Unchecked. Unchallenged. Invisible. His jaw tightened slightly. Because now the money didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt like a price. A price placed on his silence. A price placed on his integrity. And suddenly, it didn't sit the same way. Vanessa watched him carefully, reading every small shift, every hesitation, every thought that almost surfaced on his face. "You're overthinking it," she said. Still calm. Still controlled. "This doesn't have to be complicated." But Daniel shook his head slowly. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. Just certain. "It already is." That was the first crack. Small. But enough. Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger. In recalculation. Because now she understood something important. He wasn't folding as easily as expected. Still, she wasn't worried. Not yet. Because people like Daniel, they always had a breaking point. You just had to find it. So she adjusted. "Let's be realistic," she continued, her tone shifting just slightly, firmer now. "You're not in a position to challenge this." There it was. The first layer beneath the offer. Not a threat yet, but close. Daniel felt it immediately. That subtle pressure. That reminder. Power. Control. Difference in position. But instead of backing down, it did the opposite. It cleared his mind. Because now he saw it clearly. This was never just a deal. It was control disguised as opportunity. And once you accepted it, you didn't just walk away. You became part of it. Forever. Daniel looked at the envelope one last time. Then stepped back. Just slightly. But enough. "I'm not deleting anything," he said. The words landed quietly. But the impact? Immediate. The air shifted. Vanessa didn't respond right away. For the first time since this started, there was silence from her side. Real silence. Because that wasn't the answer she expected. Not after the offer. Not after the number. Not after the hesitation she saw earlier. She studied him again. More carefully now. More seriously. And what she saw this time wasn't uncertainty. It was resolve. That changed things. "You should reconsider," she said. Still calm. But tighter now. More controlled. Like she was holding something back. Daniel didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't explain. Because there was nothing left to negotiate. The decision had already been made. And they both knew it. Vanessa exhaled slowly. A controlled breath. Resetting. Reframing. Then she did something different. She stepped closer again. But this time, there was no softness in it. No politeness. Just presence. "You don't fully understand the situation you've put yourself in," she said quietly. And now, there it was. The shift. The line between offer and warning. Daniel felt it clearly. But he didn't react. Because he had already thought about this part. Already expected it. And more importantly, already prepared for it. My situation didn't change, he said calmly. Yours did. That landed harder than anything before, because it flipped everything. And Vanessa knew it. Her eyes locked onto his, sharper now, searching, calculating, trying to find the angle, the weakness, the point where this could still be controlled. But something was off, something she hadn't accounted for. Because Daniel wasn't reacting like someone cornered. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't negotiating. He wasn't even defensive. He was steady. And that made him dangerous. Let me be very clear, she said, her voice lower now. If you take this further, it won't end well for you. Direct. Unfiltered. No more layers. Daniel held her gaze. And for the first time, there was something different in his expression. Not fear. Not doubt. Confidence. Quiet. Controlled. But real. I think you're starting to realize, he said, that it's already not ending well for you. Silence. Heavy. Sharp. And, in that moment, everything changed. Because Vanessa finally understood something she hadn't before. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't reacting. He had already made his move. And she didn't know what it was. That uncertainty? That lack of control? That's what shifted the balance completely. Vanessa stepped back slowly, not retreating, repositioning. Because now this wasn't about persuasion anymore. It was about damage control. You made mistake, she said. Calm again, but colder, much colder. Daniel didn't respond. Because maybe he did. Or maybe he just refused to make the one she wanted. And as the silence stretched between them, one thing became undeniable. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Something neither of them could fully stop. And deep down, they both knew it. Daniel didn't go home right away. Even after leaving the building, even after stepping into the cold night air, something didn't sit right. The city around him moved like normal. Cars passed. Lights flickered. People walked by without a second thought. But for him, everything felt different. Because now he wasn't just someone who saw something. He was someone who knew too much. And more importantly, someone who had been seen. That changes things. Completely. He got into his car, closed the door, and just sat there for a moment. No music. No movement. Just silence. Processing. Replaying every second. The file. The envelope. Vanessa's voice. Her eyes. That shift when he refused. And then the realization hit him hard. This wasn't over. Not even close. If anything, it had just started. Daniel reached for his phone, opened his files, checked the copy. Still there. Untouched. Real. He made another copy. Then another. Different locations. Different formats. Offline. Cloud. Encrypted. Because now it wasn't just about having the information. It was about making sure it couldn't disappear. Or worse, be taken. His hands moved faster now. More precise. More focused. Because fear was turning into preparation. And preparation creates control. But even then, there was one thing he couldn't ignore. Vanessa. People like her don't just walk away. They don't accept loss quietly. They respond. Strategically. And that meant one thing. She would come back. The question wasn't if. It was how. Daniel exhaled slowly and leaned back. If she came back, he needed to be ready. Not just with the files, but with something stronger. Something immediate. Something undeniable. That's when the idea formed. Simple. Effective. Irreversible. He opened his phone settings. Enabled recording shortcuts. Tested angles. Audio clarity. Positioning. Because if there was going to be another conversation, he wasn't going into it unprotected. Not again. The next morning came faster than expected. Daniel hadn't slept much. Not because he couldn't, but because his mind wouldn't slow down. Every scenario, every possibility, every outcome, running constantly, until finally, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it for a second, then answered. Daniel, her voice said calmly. No greeting. No hesitation. Just control. I think we should finish our conversation. There it was. Right on time. He didn't ask how she got his number. That question didn't matter. Where, he asked. A short pause. Then, somewhere quiet. The location was neutral. Not her office. Not his space. A private meeting room inside a high-end business complex. Clean. Minimal. Controlled. Of course. Daniel arrived first. Not by accident. He needed time. Time to position himself. Time to prepare. He chose a seat with clear visibility. Adjusted his phone carefully. Screen angled. Recording ready. Subtle. Unnoticeable. But active. Then he waited. Every second felt longer than it should. Because this time, there was more at stake. Not just information, but leverage, control, and possibly safety. The door opened. Vanessa walked in. Same composure, same presence, same control, at least on the surface. She closed the door behind her and stepped forward. Her eyes immediately locked onto him. Reading, scanning, measuring. Good, she said simply, taking a seat across from him. No small talk. No wasted time. Straight to it. I assume you've had time to think, she continued. Daniel nodded slightly. I have. Silence. She waited. Because she expected something. An adjustment. A hesitation. A change. But it didn't come. I'm not deleting anything, he said. Again. Clear. Final. And, this time, there was no pause after. No uncertainty. Just certainty. Vanessa leaned back slowly, studying him more carefully now, because something was different. Yesterday, there was hesitation. Today, there was none. You're making a mistake, she said. Calm, but sharper. Daniel tilted his head slightly. I don't think I am. That was the moment. The exact moment where everything shifted. Because Vanessa realized something she didn't expect. He wasn't just refusing. He was comfortable refusing. And that meant one thing. He had something. Something she didn't know about. Something she couldn't see. And that uncertainty? That's what broke control. You're more confident than you should be, she said quietly. Daniel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached for his phone. Slowly, deliberately, placed it on the table. Screen facing up. Vanessa's eyes dropped to it for a split second. Then back to him. What is that supposed to mean? She asked. Daniel met her gaze. Calm. Steady. It means, he said, this conversation matters more than you think. A pause. A beat. Then, he tapped the screen lightly. The red indicator reflected faintly. Small. Subtle. But undeniable. Recording. Vanessa froze. Not visibly at first. But, internally, it hit. Hard. Her eyes sharpened. Her posture stiffened just slightly. You're recording this? She asked. Her voice still controlled. But tighter now. Much tighter. Daniel didn't smile. Didn't react. He just held her gaze. And that was enough. Because silence confirmed everything. And in that moment, for the first time since this started, Vanessa lost something critical. Certainty. Because now, this wasn't just a conversation. It was evidence. And every word from this point forward could become something much bigger. The room felt different now. Heavier. Tighter. More dangerous. Because the balance had shifted. Completely. You think this protects you? She said slowly. Daniel leaned back, slightly. Calm. Unmoved. No, he replied. A small pause. Then, it exposes you. And just like that, the power changed hands. The word hung in the air. It exposes you. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Because what he said wasn't meant to intimidate. It was meant to redefine the situation. And it worked. Vanessa didn't respond immediately. For the first time since this began, she was processing instead of controlling. Her eyes shifted just slightly, back to the phone on the table. That small red glow. Steady. Unblinking. Recording everything. Every word. Every reaction. Every move. Evidence. Real. Undeniable. You're making a very dangerous assumption, she said finally. Her tone was still composed. But there was something underneath it now. Pressure. Tension. something she wasn't used to feeling in situations like this. Daniel stayed still, watching her, because now, every reaction mattered, not just for the moment, but for what it could become later. "I'm not assuming anything," he replied calmly. "I'm documenting it." That word landed differently. Documenting, not threatening, not accusing, just recording reality. And that made it harder to fight. Vanessa leaned back slowly, folding her arms. A defensive move, subtle, but real, because now she understood. This wasn't a conversation she could erase later. This was a moment that could exist beyond this room. "You really think this changes anything?" she asked. Her voice dipped slightly, lower, colder. Daniel tilted his head just a fraction. "It already has." Silence followed, heavy, because deep down, she knew he was right. The moment that phone started recording, the dynamic shifted, from private to potentially public, from controlled to unpredictable. And unpredictability was something Vanessa avoided at all costs. She stood up slowly, walked a few steps away, not pacing, not reacting emotionally, just thinking, recalculating, because now the strategy had to change. The offer alone wouldn't work anymore. Neither would pressure. This required something else, something sharper. She turned back toward him. "You're playing a risky game," she said. Daniel didn't move. "Only if I don't know the rules," he replied. That hit again, not loudly, but precisely. And now, there was no denying it. This wasn't going the way she planned. Not even close. Vanessa stepped closer to the table again. But this time, she didn't sit. She remained standing, slightly above him, trying to regain positional control. "You release anything from this," she said slowly, "and you don't just damage me." A pause. Her eyes locked onto his. "You damage yourself." There it was. The shift from control to consequence, from offer to threat. But it wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive, which made it more dangerous. Because it was real. Daniel held her gaze. Unshaken. "Maybe," he said. "A beat. Then. Or maybe I already made sure that doesn't happen." That was new. And Vanessa caught it immediately. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Because that wasn't confidence anymore. That was preparation. "You're bluffing," she said. Not fully convinced, but testing. Daniel didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached for the phone again, tapped the screen once, adjusted it slightly. Still recording, still active. Then he looked back at her and said nothing, because sometimes silence creates more doubt than words ever could. And that doubt, it started to spread. Vanessa felt it, even if she didn't show it fully, because now she had a problem, a real one. If he had backups, if this wasn't the only copy, if this conversation wasn't contained, then this wasn't something she could control through a single move. And control was everything. The room felt smaller now, tighter, like the walls themselves were closing in on the situation. Vanessa exhaled slowly, resetting. Again. But this time, it wasn't as smooth, because now she was reacting, not leading. "Let's think carefully about what happens next," she said. A different tone now, less force, more calculation. Daniel watched her, because this was the moment, the exact moment where control either came back to her, or left completely. "You already know what happens next," he said. Calm, final. And that was it. No explanation, no detail. Just certainty. Vanessa stared at him for a long second, trying to read him, trying to find the weakness, the hesitation, the gap. But there wasn't one. And that's when it hit her. Not emotionally, strategically. This situation was no longer hers to control. She stepped back, slowly, not defeated, but aware. Aware that this wasn't something she could fix in this room. Not anymore. "You've made your position clear," she said. Cold again, controlled again, but different. Because now it wasn't confidence. It was containment. Daniel didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. Everything important had already been captured, recorded, locked in. And they both knew it. Vanessa turned toward the door, paused for a brief moment, then spoke without looking back. This isn't over. Not a threat. Not a promise. Just a fact. And then she left. The door closed softly behind her, but the silence she left behind was louder than anything that had happened in that room. Daniel sat there for a few seconds longer, not moving, not reacting, just breathing. Because even though he didn't show it, he understood something very clearly now. This had gone further than expected, much further, and whatever came next wouldn't be simple. He reached forward, stopped the recording, looked at the file, saved, stored, real. And in that moment, one truth settled in completely. This wasn't just evidence anymore. It was leverage. And leverage changes everything. The silence after Vanessa left didn't feel like relief. It felt like a warning. Daniel stayed seated for a moment longer, staring at the closed door, listening to the faint echo of her footsteps fading down the hallway. Gone. But not finished. Not even close. He knew that. Because people like her didn't lose control and just walk away. They adapted. They waited. And then they responded. Daniel reached for his phone again, checking the recording one more time. Every second of that conversation was there. Clear. Sharp. Undeniable. Proof. But proof alone didn't make him safe. If anything, it made him more exposed. Because now he wasn't just someone who knew something. He was someone who could prove it. And that made him a problem. A real one. He stood up slowly, packed his things, and left the building without looking back. No rush. No panic. Just controlled movement. Because panic attracts attention. And attention was the last thing he needed right now. The city felt different again. Not because it had changed, but because he had. Every passing car, every person walking by, every reflection in a window. He noticed everything, not out of fear, but awareness. Because now he understood something clearly. This wasn't just about information anymore. It was about consequences. He got into his car, locked the doors immediately, and sat still for a second, thinking, planning, replaying. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. He didn't answer this time. He just watched it ring, until it stopped. A few seconds later, a message appeared. No name. No introduction. Just a sentence. You should have taken the offer. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. Not surprise. Not fear. Just confirmation. Because this was expected. This was the next step. Pressure. Psychological first. Physical maybe later. He didn't reply. Didn't engage. Because engagement creates openings. And openings create risk. He started the engine and drove. Not home. Not yet. Instead, he made 3 stops. Each one intentional. Each one part of a plan that was forming in real time. First stop. A small electronics store. Nothing unusual. Nothing memorable. He bought a second phone. Cash. No questions. Second stop. A quiet cafe across town. He sat in the corner, connected to public Wi-Fi, and began uploading copies of the files. Not everything. Not all at once. Just enough. Distributed. Fragmented. Protected. Because now the goal wasn't just to hold the information. It was to make sure it couldn't be erased. Third stop. A place no one would think to check. Not obvious. Not predictable. That's where he secured the final backup. Offline. Untouchable. Because if everything else failed, that one would remain. By the time he finally got home, it was late. The kind of late where the city quiets down just enough to make every sound feel louder than it should. Daniel stepped inside, locked the door, and leaned against it for a moment. Still. Listening. Nothing. Just silence. But even that didn't feel normal anymore. Because silence now could mean anything. He walked through his apartment slowly, checking everything without making it obvious. Windows, locks, shadows, all clear. At least for now. He sat down, placed both phones in front of him, and exhaled slowly. This was the moment. The one where most people would second-guess everything. Was it worth it? Should he have taken the money? Should he have walked away? But Daniel didn't ask those questions. Because deep down, he already knew the answer. This was bigger than him now. And walking away wouldn't erase it. It would just make him part of it. His phone buzzed again. This time, a different message. Different number. Shorter. Colder. You don't know who you're dealing with. Daniel stared at the screen. Then, for the first time since this started, he smiled. Not because it was funny. Not because it was easy. But because it confirmed something important. They were reacting. Which meant they were uncertain. And uncertainty creates mistakes. He picked up the second phone. Typed something. Stopped. Deleted it. No replies. Not yet. Because responding too early gives away position. And right now, position was everything. The next morning came with a different kind of tension. Quieter. Heavier. More focused. Daniel stepped outside, scanning the area without making it obvious. Everything looked normal. But normal didn't mean safe. He walked to his car, paused for half a second, then continued. Nothing out of place. Still, that feeling didn't leave. That subtle awareness that he was being watched. Not directly, not visibly, but somewhere. Someone was paying attention. He got in the car and sat there for a moment, thinking. Because now the situation had evolved again. This wasn't just pressure anymore. It was escalation. And escalation only goes in one direction. Unless you change the game. Daniel looked at his phone again. Then at the second one. Then back. And that's when the next move became clear. Not defensive. Not reactive. Strategic. Because if they were trying to scare him into silence, then he needed to do the opposite. He needed to make silence impossible. He picked up his phone, opened the files, hovered for a second, then stopped. Not yet. Timing mattered. More than anything. Because once this moved forward, there was no pulling it back. No control. No negotiation. Just consequences. For everyone involved. Daniel leaned back slightly and closed his eyes for a brief moment. Not resting. Not hesitating. Just locking in. Because what came next would decide everything. And somewhere, on the other side of all this, Vanessa was preparing too. Different strategy. Different moves. Same goal. Control. But now, only one of them could have it. And the line between silence and exposure was about to disappear completely. Daniel didn't rush it. That was the difference between reacting and executing. For hours, he had the files open in front of him. The recordings, the transactions, the names, every piece of information sitting there, ready to be released with a single decision. One click. That's all it would take. But he didn't click. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about putting something out into the world. It was about how it entered the world. And more importantly, who saw it first. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the screen, replaying the recording again. Vanessa's voice echoed clearly through the speakers. Controlled, calculated, then slightly pressured, then uncertain. That shift? That was everything. Because people don't react to information alone. They react to contrast. And that recording? It showed the exact moment control started slipping. That was the hook. The piece that would make people stop, listen, and question everything. Daniel opened multiple tabs. Different platforms. Different channels. Different entry points. He wasn't going to drop everything in one place. That would be too easy to suppress. Too easy to contain. Instead, he broke it apart. Strategically. A piece here. A fragment there. Just enough to raise questions. Just enough to trigger attention. Because once attention starts, it spreads. And once it spreads, it becomes impossible to control. The first upload was small. Almost invisible. A short clip. No context. Just a moment. Vanessa's voice. You delete everything, and this ends. Cut. That's it. No explanation. No names. Just tension. Just implication. Daniel watched it go live. Then waited. 5 minutes. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still quiet. Then, a single reaction. A comment. Confused. Curious. What is this? Then, another. Wait, what's going on here? And just like that, It started. Slow at first. Then faster. Because curiosity is contagious. People don't ignore things they don't understand. They dig. They share. They speculate. Daniel didn't interfere. Didn't respond. Didn't guide it. He just watched. Because this wasn't about controlling the narrative. It was about starting it. The second release came later. A little more. A little clearer. A screenshot. Blurred names. But recognizable patterns. Money movements. Connections. Enough to suggest something bigger. Now the reactions changed. Less confusion. More attention. More questions. More engagement. This looks serious. This isn't random. Who is this about? The pattern was forming. Exactly how he planned. By the third drop, there was no stopping it. The recording. Longer this time. Vanessa's voice clearer. The offer more obvious. The pressure undeniable. And, this time, a name slipped through. Not fully hidden. Not fully exposed. Just enough. Vanessa Cole. That was the moment everything shifted. Because now it wasn't just a mystery. It was a target. And once a name enters the conversation, everything accelerates. Across the city. Across different screens. Across different people. The same reaction started building. Recognition. Then shock. Then interest. Because Vanessa wasn't just anyone. She was known. Respected. Connected. And now, questioned. Vanessa saw it within minutes. Of course she did. People like her always do. Her phone didn't stop vibrating. Messages. Calls. Alerts. All at once. At first, she dismissed it. Assumed it was noise. Irrelevant. Containable. But then she opened the clip. And everything went quiet. Not around her. Inside her. Because she recognized her own voice immediately. And not just the words. The tone. The shift. The moment control slipped. Captured. Recorded. Released. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Not shaking. But firm. Controlled. Trying to stay ahead of it. But already knowing. This wasn't small. This wasn't isolated. This was spreading. And worse. It wasn't coming from one place. Which meant it couldn't be stopped easily. Back in his apartment, Daniel watched the numbers climb. Views. Shares. Mentions. Faster now. Louder. Bigger. And still, he didn't release everything. Not yet. Because the final move wasn't about attention. It was about impact. And impact requires timing. Vanessa made calls. Fast. Precise. Trying to trace the source. Trying to contain the spread. Trying to control the damage. But every move hit resistance. Because there was no single source. No single leak. Just fragments. Everywhere. And that made it impossible to shut down completely. For the first time in a long time. She wasn't ahead. She was catching up. And catching up means losing. Daniel leaned forward again. Opened the final file. The full recording. Uncut. Clear. Complete. His finger hovered over the screen. This was it. The point of no return. Once this went out, there was no control left. No silence. No deal. Just truth. Raw. Exposed. And permanent. He exhaled slowly. Then pressed send. The effect was immediate. Not slow. Not gradual. Immediate. Because now everything connected. The fragments. The clips. The questions. All answered at once. And when people understood what they were looking at, the reaction changed completely. Shock. Outrage. Attention. Because now it wasn't speculation anymore. It was proof. And proof spreads faster than anything else. Vanessa's world didn't collapse all at once. It cracked. Then fractured. Then started breaking in pieces. Calls stopped being supportive. Messages stopped being neutral. People started distancing. Quietly. Quickly. Because reputation only exists as long as people believe in it. And belief can disappear fast. Daniel sat back, watching it unfold. Not smiling. Not celebrating. Just observing. Because this was never about revenge. It was about control. And now, control was gone. For both of them. But only one of them was ready for that. And as the noise grew louder, as the story spread further, as everything started unraveling, one thing became undeniable. The silence she tried to buy had become the loudest truth in the room.